All right, good morning, good morning, good morning, and welcome to the first ever episode of the AntiPerfect podcast, the podcast where Black women get real about what it takes to build a life that they love. I'm your host, Jati, and I like to give a little disclaimer at the beginning of every episode because, sis, I love you too much to lie to you, and I respect myself too much to keep pretending. If you're looking for motivation, manifestation, or just pretty plans that ignore reality, this is not the podcast for you. However, if you've read the books, gone to therapy, done the work, and you still feel stuck, then this is your new home base. Today, we are talking about the concept of radical honesty and how, if you accept it and apply it, it will completely change your life. So let's get into it. Before we go any further, I want to be really clear about what I mean by radical honesty. This isn't about confessing your deepest secrets to strangers or trauma dumping to people on the internet, and it's not about performative vulnerability. What I'm actually talking about is the stories that you repeat to yourself every day without questioning themselves. And if you're willing to be honest, brutally honest about those stories, everything else starts to shift. The truth is, most of us aren't stuck because we don't know what to do or how to do it. We're stuck because we're telling ourselves very specific lies about who we are and what we actually want. Now, there are three very specific lies that I think come up over and over again, in my opinion. The first lie that we tell ourselves is, I want more. Now, this lie is for the people who are really good at visualizing. Raising my hand here, I'm included. The big picture thinkers, the ones who can see the future, who can imagine a different life, who can dream 10 steps ahead, but struggle when it comes to the day to day processing and details. Psychologically, humans get a massive dopamine hit from imagining the future. Our brains are incredibly good at treating the thing we desire as if it's already achieved. Just thinking about it can be satisfying enough, rewarding even enough that we don't take it any further. And I do want to be clear again to say I don't have a problem with visualization. I don't have a problem with manifestation, vision boards, Pinterest boards, any of that. They're tools and they're great ones, but the tools aren't the issue. The problem is having a strong vision of the future and a weak understanding of the present. Because if you don't have a clear, honest grasp of where you are right now, there is no logical way to build yourself towards what you're visualizing. You can't bridge a gap you refuse to measure. This is where the lie comes in. When we say, I want more, it sounds really honest. It feels honest. But most of the time, it's very incomplete. And when something is incomplete on purpose, it becomes a lie by omission. I want more is vague enough to protect us, vague enough to avoid action, vague enough to avoid discomfort. Because when most people say they want more, what they're really saying is, I want more without the discomfort. I want more without changing who I am. And I want more without disappointing anyone around me. And that isn't wanting more. That's wanting the outcome without the transformation. That's doing the same thing over and over again while expecting a different result. And we already have a word for that. Once you admit that I want more is incomplete, and once you stop hiding behind that vagueness, another sentence usually shows up right behind it. And that is, I don't know what to do. And that's lie number two. I don't know what to do sounds like one of the most responsible things that you can say. As Black women, a lot of the time, I think that there's a power for us in finally saying that we don't know what to do. It sounds really self aware, even sounds humble, but most of the time, it's just not honest enough, is what I'll say. It's not going deep enough. Because most of the time, it's not confusion, it's avoidance. Because the truth is, you usually do know what to do. You know the next step. You know the conversation you've been avoiding. You know the situation step you've been letting go for too long. You know the habit that needs to change. And you know the structure that you'd have to build. What you don't want to be honest about is what that knowledge would actually require from you. And that you aren't there yet. And here's the part we won't say out loud. I don't know what to do quietly takes the responsibility off of you to act and places it onto some vague external concept that you can keep reaching for. Clarity, the right answer, the perfect plan, something outside of you that hasn't arrived yet. And that's what makes this lie so comfortable and easy. Because if you say you don't know what to do, you give yourself permission to keep looking. You get to keep doing the research. You get to consume more content. You get to ask for more advice. You get to wait for the perfect answer. And all of that feels productive without actually requiring you to do the work that it takes for you to be successful or happy inside of your life. As long as you're figuring it out, you don't have to deal with the real problem. Because the real problem isn't that you don't know what to do, it's that you don't have the capacity to do what you already know is the right thing. And that's a much harder truth to face. Radical honesty would sound like this: I know what to do, but I don't have the energy to do it all at once. I know what to do, but I don't have the support I need to sustain it. I know what to do, but I'd have to disappoint people if I follow through. That's not confusion, and it's not incompetence. That's honesty about limits, and honesty about limits gives you an automatic next step. If you don't have the energy to do it all at once, the next logical question becomes, okay, how do I break this down into manageable steps? And if you know what to do but don't have the support to sustain it, the next question becomes, how do I build the support? And none of this is pretty or aesthetic or fun, but it is the right next step to make sure that you can sustain your own happiness and build a life that's actually true to you and a life that you love. The only way out of the loop of, I don't know if this is the right thing to do, is to be honest about the fact that you do know and admit that something else is stopping you from acting on it. But instead of telling that truth, we tend to soften it. We say, I'll get to it. We say, I'm still figuring things out. We say, I just need more time, because confusion keeps you busy. Honesty would force you to slow down, break things down, and rebuild your capacity. Honesty would mean that you have to ask for the help. Honesty would mean that people would have to see you at a lower capacity than you want them to see you at. So, no, you don't need more clarity. You need the courage to admit what you already know and the honesty to tell the truth about what you can actually handle right now. All right. So, after I want more, after I don't know what to do, there's usually one last thing people blame. I just need more motivation. And that is lie number 3. You don't need to be motivated to do the right thing. You need to believe the right thing will actually work. And for a lot of us, the real issue is that we've given ourselves conscious trust issues. You say you're done drinking, then 3 weeks later you're out again because the girls want to go out. You say you want to lose weight, then you walk for 3 days and you stop. And I'm not judging. The walking one is my real life. I'm supposed to be on the treadmill right now. What eventually happens is you tell your brain all of these mini promises, and then since you're just telling yourself, you think that there's no consequence of not following through on the things that you say, because the consequence is internal in that you stop believing yourself. You stop trusting yourself, and self-trust is the key to true confidence, right? And eventually your brain just stops believing you no matter what you say, not because you're lazy and not because you're incapable, but because you trained it not to trust your words. And that's why motivation doesn't show up. Your brain isn't waiting for inspiration, it's waiting for evidence. And that is what radical honesty honestly looks like in this space. When you say I need more motivation, what you really mean is, I don't believe I can sustain this. I don't believe this effort will pay off. I don't believe myself. That's not a motivation problem. That's a belief problem. And belief doesn't come from hype. It comes from self-trust. And self-trust is built through evidence. And evidence is built through practice and repetition, which means that you need to rebuild your self-trust muscle. And the easiest way that I found to rebuild a self-trust muscle is to take a first step that is so simple and small that you'd feel ridiculous if you didn't do it. Make a promise so small to yourself that if you don't do it, you can't even deny that it's just you not doing it. For instance, instead of saying that you're going to work out for 30 minutes a day, every single day, Monday through Friday, that might be too much for your brain to believe right now. But your brain might believe you if you say, okay, instead of doing 30 minutes a day, what I can do is a 5-minute mini workout once every single day. And you might be like, 5 minutes, Jatir, that's not going to change my body. It doesn't need to change your body. It needs to change your brain. It needs to build a habit that your brain is going to believe that you can actually go forward with. And if 5 minutes is the starting point, you need to stop trying to skip that, because if you do, you're going to experience the same thing that weightlifters do in the gym when they try to lift more than they can actually expend. You're going to end up hurting yourself. You're going to end up in pain, and you're going to end up on the floor, weights on top of your chest, looking stupid. Let me give you a real example, because I know that you guys probably think I'm just like making this stuff up, right? I wanted to do a podcast for a long time. You can ask anybody that knows me. I can give you a list of names of podcasts that have Instagrams, that have pages, and just have never been recorded. And for a while, I told myself that I didn't know how to do the podcast thing, but that wasn't true. Once I got honest, I realized the issue wasn't logistics, it was being seen. Being on camera, being visually perceived, that's something that I had to admit I had a huge problem with. And also, a secondary thing was my perfectionism, not wanting to start smaller because I wanted to be at a level of like I see my favorite podcasters at. And I had to sit down and get really, really honest. Okay, for starters, I'm new. So my episodes are just not going to be like other people's episodes. I'm sorry. This is what y'all are gonna get from me right now. And if I don't like to be on camera, then I had to realize that, like, I don't have to be on camera. You guys can just get my voice. My voice is enough. I have a nice voice. You can be a person that's experiencing that. That is like, oh, okay, I just don't know what to do with this thing that I want to do. For me, the podcast, right? But when you get honest, you're like, I know all the steps for the podcast. I know where to record. I know where to host. I have the visuals that I would need for like my logo and everything like that. So what's really going on? And then you dig a little deeper and you're like, I just don't want to be on camera. And then it's like, okay, why don't you want to be on camera? I have a fear of being seen. Now I'm breaking down the fear of being seen inside of therapy, right? But in the meantime, what is the next step that I can take if I don't want to be seen? The next step I can take is just not being seen. A podcast is voice first. So put my voice out there, right? And then giving up on the concept of perfectionist. The thing that I can do right now is record non-visual audio and post that to my podcast. That my brain can trust me to do. Right. Every time I was like, you know what, I'm going to get myself dressed and I am going to get going on this podcast and I'm going to do my makeup and do my hair and get on this camera. My brain was like, girl, you are lying. You are telling a tall tale to me. And I know you better than anybody. You is not about to do all that and get on camera. But what I can do with no qualms and no issues is talk. And that's how it works. And now there is no lack of motivation. The podcast is going. The first episode is recorded. It's posted. Y'all are listening to it, right? But not because I suddenly got the motivation, but because I built belief through repetition at a level that I could handle. You don't raise the bar first. You earn the right and you build the muscle to raise it. Belief is built when your actions match your claims, and your actions can only match your claims when you are ridiculously, stupidly honest with yourself. So no, you don't need more motivation. It's not that you don't know what to do, and it's not that you want more out of life. You need radical honesty about what is actually in the way, and a starting point so small that keeping your word becomes inevitable. Because once you believe yourself again, motivation becomes irrelevant, and discipline finally has something solid to stand on. All right, so here's the reframe. I gotta bring it together for you guys. Radical honesty is not about being harsh with yourself. It's not about calling yourself out or forcing change, right? It's about finally telling the truth to your nervous system so that it can build a system that it can work with. Radical honesty sounds like, this is where I am, this is what I can actually handle, and the smallest problems This is the smallest promise I can keep to myself right now. And that is enough. And on the back of radical honesty, once you get that part down, you begin to practice another very important trait in the art of changing your life, and that's radical acceptance. But radical acceptance is a whole nother episode. Radical honesty isn't loud, it's quiet, it's grounded, and it's very real. And if you allow it, it will compound, and 2026 will be so different for you than you ever expected. And that's it, and that's all. Listen, guys, this is the episode. If there's nothing else that I hope you heard from me, just remember, you don't need more motivation. You don't need to want it harder. You need to tell the truth about where you are and start from there. Pick one thing, make it so small you can't lie about it, and keep that promise. That's how belief is built. That's how capacity grows. That's how change actually sticks. This isn't about becoming perfect. It's about becoming honest. And honesty, real honesty, radical honesty, is enough to change everything. I'll see you guys next time.